Welcome to this lesson on factoring trinomials where a does not equal to 1. In this lesson, I'm going to go through and show you using decomposition in order to factor these types of trinomials. We have used that in the past in other lessons, and this one is just where a does not equal to 1, so it adds a little bit of a wrinkle to the whole situation. I'm going to go through one example in detail with how to solve it. Then I'm going to give you a bunch more examples where I'd like you to try and do it yourself. Gladly pause the video when those slides come up. Try to factor it yourself, and then we'll go through and solve each one of them in order. Again, I'm going to use decomposition for each. If you want to take a look at logical reasoning, I do have another video that you can look at using logical reasoning in order to solve that as well. If you're in my class, we'll talk about that in another class, not this one right now. So let's start off with using decomposition in order to factor a trinomial. The first thing that we have to be aware of is we have to remember our form ax squared plus bx plus c. We need to know what is our a value, our b value, and our c value in order to use decomposition. Now remember that the a value is the number in front of the x squared, the b value is the number in front of the x, and the c value is the number that is the constant at the end. Each one of these numbers will be either positive or negative based on the sign that's in front of them. In this case, A and B are both positive, and C is a negative value, and we have to make sure that we keep that in there. Let's go through our steps in order to use decomposition. Step 1, same as we've used in the past, it's multiply the A and the C value together. Now, the difference is that the A value is not 1 anymore. It's something different. And I'm using an example where C is a negative. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So we are now going to use negative 8 as our reference or as our AC value. The second step that we do is we need to find all pairs of factors for AC. AC is negative 8. We need to find pairs of factors for that. Because it's a negative, it means that one of the factors will be a negative and the other one will be a positive. So I'm going to start off with the little ones being negative. So I have negative 1 and positive 8. Now we're going to get down to the bottom here and we're going to realize that negative 8 and positive 1 is also a factor or a pair of factors that could be used as well. Now I'm just going to kind of go up. I'm always going to make the first one negative, the second one positive. And so here's our 4 pairs of factors which multiply together to get negative 8. Again, one of them is negative and the other one is positive. Step 3, find the pair of factors which add to b. Well, let's go back and look at our b value. Our b value is 7. Which of these pairs of factors adds to 7? It's the top one. Look at that. Okay, negative 1 and positive 8 add to 7, just like this here. Now, we can go through and solve that. Now, if you want to, there is a link to this whole form or these 2 slides where I go through this method, and it's just these two slides. Remember those 2 numbers, negative 1 and positive 8. We're going to bring them out in our second slide here. And in this case, we need to rewrite the trinomial splitting up the middle term. Now, our middle term, positive 7, can be written with negative 1 and positive 8. Now, we could also flip that around as well. We could write it as positive 8 and negative 1. The order does not matter. We're going to get the same values both ways. So split up that. We have now 4 terms. Step 5, we need to factor greatest common factor for the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. So think of it as the first 2 terms, 2x squared minus x. What's our greatest common factor? Well, in this case here, we can't take out a number. We may be able to at some point, but in this case, we can't. But we can take out an x. And so we're going to take out an x, and it's left with 2x minus 1. The second 2, 8x minus 4, we can take a 4 out of, and again, it's going to leave us with 2x minus 1. Remember that inside the brackets always needs to be the same thing. So we got 2x minus 1 in each case. So we're going to now try to figure out what our 2 binomials are, which would give us 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. Step 6, the 2 greatest common factors are one of our binomials. So the greatest common factors that we pulled out are x and a positive 4, and they will be our first binomial right there. Okay. Now, if you want to make it your second binomial, that's fine. The order can be swapped, but I'm going to use it as the first one. Step 7, the dividend that we pulled out or we took, we got from taking our greatest common factors out. Again, it's the same, right? So that is going to be our second term in there. If you follow these steps, you will always get the correct answer in about the same amount of time. Like I said, you can use logical reasoning. It just takes a little bit longer sometimes, or it might go really quick, depending on if you pick up on the pattern really quickly. Let's take a look at some examples. Here is an example, and I'd like you to try to solve it on your own. You can pause the video at this point and give you a couple minutes to try to solve it on your own. Welcome back. Let's go through the process of factoring this trinomial here. We have 2a squared plus 11a plus 12. First step, we multiply the a and the c together. And I'm going to put the steps there up on top. They might look a little different, just different terminology at times. 2 times 12 is 24. All right, 24 has a lot of pairs of factors. Let's go through and find the pair of factors which adds to 11. Well, here is 3 of them. I didn't include the 4 times 6 or the negatives, but we found the 3 times 8, and that's going to, if we add 3 and 8 together, that gives us 11. Perfect. Well, we're done. We don't need to find any more factors for 24. Let's decompose our middle term. Okay, so the 11a becomes 3a and 8a. And now we need to factor a greatest common factor from the first 2 terms and a greatest common factor from the second 2 terms. The first 2 terms, we have 2 and 3. We can only take a 1 out, but we can take an a out of both of those terms, and we're left with 2a plus 3. The second 2 terms, we could factor out a 4. And when we do that, we also get 2a plus 3. And so our 2 factors are going to be 2a plus 3 and a plus 4. All right, hopefully you were able to get those as your factors, and if not, let's try another one here. So here we have some negatives. Let's try factoring this one out. Pause the video and try to factor this trinomial into 2 binomials. Welcome back. Let's take a look if you were able to do it correctly. Multiply 3 and negative 10 together, and we get negative 30. Now, because we have negative 30, we know that our factors, we're going to have a positive factor and a negative factor. Our b value is a negative number, which means that our negative factor will be the bigger one. So we don't even have to start with the negatives as small ones. Let's start with the big ones. Negative 30 and 1 doesn't add to negative 13. Negative 15 and 2, yeah, that adds to negative 13. Perfect. So hopefully you got those as your factors of negative 30. Decompose, or there we go, there's our answer. They add together to be negative 13. Now we decompose our middle term to be negative 15u and positive 2u. Now remember that I like to put the negative first, as it just makes factoring a little bit easier. If you decide to put it second, it means that you will have 2 negatives in a row, and then you just have to factor out a negative greatest common factor instead of a positive greatest common factor. But that's completely up to you. We'll get the same answer in the end. All right, 3u squared and negative 15u. We can factor out a 3u, and we're left with u minus 5. The 2u and the 10, we can factor out a 2, and we're left with, again, u minus 5. So our final answer will be u minus 5 and 3u plus 2. So there is another example of our work. All right, hopefully you're able to get that as an answer, and let's try another one. So this one's going to deal with slightly bigger numbers, okay? And you might notice that 6, 21, and 9 are all divisible by 3. So let's make it easier on ourselves. Let's factor out a 3. All right, if you saw that, awesome. If you didn't have enough time, I'm sorry. But let's factor 2y squared minus 7y plus 3. I'll give you a little bit of time. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now let's look at factoring 2y squared minus 7y plus 3. And we're going to leave that 3 just off to the side right now. and then we'll bring it back in later because it is also a factor of this trinomial. 2 times 3 is 6, and we're looking for two numbers which multiply to 6 but add to negative 7. It means that our two factors are going to have to be negatives. So we can look at the positive ones there, and we can look at the negative ones. We might as well only look at the negatives, really, but negative 1 and negative 6 add to get negative 7. So we're going to have two negative factors in the middle, and it looks a little bit like this. Now you'll notice that I have put the 3 back in there. You don't need to at this point yet. Make sure that it's in at the end. All right, 2y squared and negative y. We can take a y out of there, and we'll be left with 2y minus 1. Negative 6y and positive 3. That negative 6y, we're going to looking for a positive 2 out of there, which means that we need to divide it by negative 3. So our other greatest common factor will be negative 3. And again, we're left with 2y minus 1. Now remember, we need to make sure that what's inside the brackets is exactly the same. We can't have a positive and negative in one side and a negative and positive in the other side. So our final answer, we're going to have 2y minus 1 and y minus 3, and that 3 is going to hang out there in the front as it is part of our factoring process as well. It is a it is a factor of it, and we've just split it into 3 factors instead of 2 factors. All right, here is another example. Let's try to solve this example and make sure you factor it fully. Pause the video, and I'll be back in a little bit. All right, welcome back. We're going to try to factor 8p squared minus 18p minus 5. Now, when you're taking a look at this one here, you'll notice that there are no greatest common factors that we could take out of all 3 of these pieces. Okay, 5 is a prime number. It does not go into 8 or negative 18. So therefore, we're going to just have to use decomposition and understand that we're going to have a little bit bigger numbers. First step, multiply our two numbers to our a and our c value together. We're going to get negative 40. Look for factors of negative 40, which add to negative 18. Negative 40 and 1 doesn't work. You'll notice I'm starting with the negatives as big because negative 18 is a negative number. Negative 20 and 2, look at that. They add to get negative 18. Man, that's nice. We don't have to do all the factors because there's still 4 and 5 and then 8 and 10, which would be a part of it as well. Decompose our middle term. We have 8p squared minus 20p plus 2p minus 3. All right, the first two, 8p squared and 20p, we can take a 4 out of each of those. Okay, make sure that you're getting that 4. It's not just 2, it's not 8, it's 4. That's our biggest one we can get. And we can also take a p out, and we're left with 2p minus 5. And then in the second two, there is nothing that we can take out of there except a 1. You need to make sure that we have the 1 in there. And so it is plus or 1 as a greatest common factor and 2p minus 5. Our final answer will then be 4p plus 1 and 2p minus 5. All right. Hopefully you're able to get that as an answer as well. And let's go and try one more example here. Pause the video. I'll put the instructions up there just in case you remember or don't remember. And try to factor out our polynomial or the trinomial fully. Pause. All right, welcome back. When we factor this out, sorry for that clap there. When we factor this out, we need to first look and see, is there a greatest common factor we can take out of all 3, just to make it easier on ourselves. 24 times 24 is a really big number. Finding the factors of that which add to negative 20 would be really difficult. Looking at this here, we can take a 4 out of all 3 of them, and we're going to make this just a little bit easier. Okay? Does anybody know what 24 times 24 is? No? Don't have it? Well, that's 576. That's a big number. Okay? And so it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a negative, so we're going to look at all sorts of different factors. But if we take out that 4, we're going to take 6 and negative 6, which is negative 36. It's a smaller number. It's going to be a little bit easier. Do this if we can. Sometimes I'll give you really big ones you can't factor. You can't take greatest common factor out. It just becomes a little more difficult. Try to find a way to make it a little easier for yourself. All right, let's look at factors of negative 36, which are going to add to get negative 5. Negative 36 and 1 doesn't work. Negative 18 and 2, nope. Negative 12 and 3, not yet. Negative 9 and 4, there we go, we've got it. Negative 9 and 4 give us negative 5, and so we can now decompose our middle term, the negative 5, into negative 9 and positive 4. And again, I like to do the negative first and the positive after. All right, you'll notice I still have that 4 in front there. That's a part of it, but you don't have to write it in until the end. 6e squared and negative 9e, we can take a 3e out, and we're left with 2e minus 3. And 4e minus 6, we can also take a 2 out, and we're left with 2e minus 3. All right, now our answer, the 4 goes in front, 2e minus 3, and 3e plus 2, and that gives us our final answer. Now, I hope you're able to get some of these answers, and I hope that you're able to kind of work through some of these questions. If you do have questions on that, please ask. Don't be afraid to ask. Make sure that you're understanding the process of it and you're able to solve for that as well. If you are curious about logical reasoning, there is a video available that you can take a look at. We'll touch on it during our next class. I'll go through it really quickly. We won't do any examples, but you can look and see if it's something that you like as well.